There were more movements in this one particular fight than there are in the whole of the first Matrix. It might actually be double. So that's a good place to start.
Keanu fighting 100 versions of Hugo. But the boys have created and choreographed a sequence that is so intricate and so involved.
In the Burly Brawl, you see Neo being more and more challenged so that he has to raise his level of skill to combat the opposite will. Smith, my character, has no resolution, cannot conquer the opposite will, because in that moment there is no understanding of that, of how to do it physically. So he escapes.
What's really cool is that the scene in itself has 3 acts. First act has about 8 Smiths versus Neo. The second act is up around 25, and then the third act is up to 80 Smiths in the park at once. Along the way, we start with stunt doubles and somewhat conservative Hong Kong style block-offs and quick cuts everywhere. Then as we get to the second act, where there's 25 men, there'll be like a mixture of CG Smiths and head replacements and doubles going on all at the same time. In the third act, where there's up to 80 men, this will be all virtual, all computer graphics, including Neo.
John came to us with storyboards for the Burly Brawl concept at the time, and goes through it with us and says, look, so we've got these shots in Matrix Reloaded that are going to have Keanu doing Kung Fu against Agent Smith. And John goes, so yeah, there's a couple of them. Well, maybe more than a couple, 5, 6, 7. So we start going, well, I guess we'll have to like shoot, lock off the camera and shoot multiple passes. And he goes, no, you're not quite getting it. It's more than 6 or 7. It's kind of 100, maybe 200, maybe 300 in one shot. Oh, okay. Huh. And then he says, yeah, and kind of bullet time as well.
Just like the last film, the brothers have got the support to push for very difficult things.
You don't want to expose the directors to too much risk. It's kind of different with Larry and Andy. Larry and Andy will take risks. And instead of us going, well, we really want to do this, it was more, you guys have got to do this. You've got to work it out. We don't care if you say it's really hard. We want to support you, but you've got to be able to do it.
At least half of the creativity in doing something like that is in planning the fight. So Larry and Andy and Wu Ping worked out the fight. I mean, Wu Ping choreographed it, ran it through Larry and Andy. They gave their additions to it. And then Wu Ping and his guys recorded themselves doing all the moves. And then I cut the fight together.
We didn't pre-plan the photography, and the procedure for that was to figure out, by way of Wu Ping's guys, what amazing feats Neo was going to do, figure out what percentage of that was actually capturable, and or a percentage of capture plus animation extensions, and some was just pure animation.
John managed to get some research funding from Larry and Andy and the studio, and we set off doing a test.
3, 2, 1, action!
We're doing this test August 14th, 15th, and 16th, year 2000. This is our first proof of concept on this idea. We've been running universal capture tests to create the synthetic face and form of Keanu for the last month and a half. Our big goal is by October, November to start having a representation of all these pieces in a virtual environment. These dudes obviously are Wu Ping's mind-blowing martial arts team. They're wearing all these highly reflective balls, and these balls are being read by these cameras up here in a procedure known as motion capture. 120 times a second they are flashing light. It looks like they're constant, but they're not. They're really strobing, and the balls, being super reflective, kick back every time they're being flashed. And we take the data and we begin to calculate where all of the little markers on their bodies are. We have taken the motion of one of the best martial artists in the world, and we have put it inside the form of Neo. So now we have a very capable Keanu Reeves kicking the living shit out of many dudes at once. Everything in the frame is 100% computer generated, the background, all the characters. Our methods completely surround three-dimensionally recording performance and then editing a lot of performances together into a longer performance. All we're really after is extending very difficult actions and viewing that from any angle in a way that just keeps the camera running longer instead of all these brief little cuts.
The park set had to accommodate a large fight where there were going to be several hundred people, I suppose. It's the sort of place where people once had lived and played, and kids grew up in the playground there and had a great time, and then kind of the world had moved on and just left this void.
If you can imagine maybe like a 20, 25-story tenement park, it was like probably twice the size of an average soundstage.
One of the wonderful things is that Owen puts so much detail into every set he builds that it can only make our visual effects look better. It's just really great. And we came in and we took 2,000 stills of the set as the initial pass to help us digitize every little thing from every window to every tree to the playground set. It's pretty much the only way to capture something as lush and detailed as Owen's set.
And we were able to use those same photographs with all the same painting and texture and detail and variation that Owen had put in there, bring it into the digital world, create these completely virtual camera moves that you never even think that wasn't real, because it was sourced from the real set.
It is definitely one of our favorite sets. We go above it, around it, and we travel a lot. It is definitely one of the sets that demanded the most work.
I'm Sister Fury, and this is Fists of Fury.
Let's shoot, man.
Every afternoon for 9 weeks, me and 12 stuntmen on the floor went through a 5.5-minute routine. I believe I had over 500 moves.
Each Smith will attack Neo and perhaps lay 3 punches or 2 punches and a kick on Neo and then be dispatched with. They figured ultimately it was easier for me to just learn each move on the day. I actually got to know the first 10 or 15 Smith's moves, but ultimately on the day they changed anyway. So I really was learning the fight as they would in Hong Kong, which was just on the day.
All the Agent Smith doubles were pretty much auditioned. We auditioned about 50 guys, acrobats, gymnasts, martial art guys, regular stunt guys. Put them through about 4 months of training to mimic the actor Hugo Weaving, as well as learn the fight choreography and develop the skills they're going to need for this.
They have expertise in different areas. Some are acrobats, some are martial artists, some can do performances, you know, that you would only get in a circus.
Are they tough guys? They're tough guys with soft hearts, how's that?
There were Smith lessons where I watched them run, and I'd watch them walk, and then so I kind of gave them a few pointers, but it wasn't more than a couple of lessons really.
When you see the scenes, you gotta remember that's the real Hugo mixed in with like 12 of the best martial arts stunt guys around.
And action!
And he's holding his own pretty well. No computers. No computers, real deal stuff. John Gaeta takes over and does his multi-passes and composite shots to really amplify the amount of people we have.
I'm totally, absolutely ready for the juggernaut of multi-pass mayhem that is being inflicted upon me by the very well-written prose of the Wachowski brothers. Remember, it's the writers that invite the technological onslaught that you may see.
So right now what we've got here is a motor control setup. It allows us to put multiple Smiths into the scene without having to use the computer graphics technology. So this rig is completely repeatable. Every time the camera goes past, we can get it to do the same move time and time again.
We'd put one Hugo there, film him, and then we'd take the camera back, and then we'd put another Hugo there and we'd film him again. So it looked initially like you would see everyone repeated was Hugo.
By the end of the sequence, there's like 80-odd Agent Smiths.
The complicated thing was working out how we were going to shoot that many Smiths fighting Keanu all at once.
There are certain parts of the sequences that we had to create that we had to map Keanu's face or Hugo's face, and we had to do things with their bodies and their look that are not real.
So the challenge was, how do you generate synthetic humans? And we thought the hardest thing would be generating a human face that had the right expressions. So we built a system that we use multiple high-def cameras, use them to shoot an actor, and then we can reconstruct that actor's facial performance. Every little muscle movement, every mouth movement, eye movement, teeth movement, all of that can be reconstructed so that we can then fly around that with a virtual camera. So we can then stick that onto a live person's body or onto a synthetic body.
The problem with working on actual humans is they're so recognizable. You look at humans every day, you're very unforgiving when you see CG hair or a CG face or any of those things.
It would take an animator who was basically the Picasso of his time to actually completely freehand a performance like that.
We basically used those facial performances and we've assigned different performance on every Smith. So we had this whole process of assigning different performances to the different Smiths. So they all do different things.
The bullet time shot in the first movie was a little more practical. You know, the action was shot from a bunch of still cameras. We're sort of recreating, Keanu and recreating Hugo so that we can basically put the camera anywhere and do anything. The idea was that the camera is always traveling at the same speed, it's just the motion is slowed down.
No frozen motion, that was the mid-90s. We wore different clothes back then.
It's sort of this blend between use mocap where the mocap works and where the mocap doesn't work, where it's just doing something that's just not capturable or just like superhuman, then that's where the hand animation has to pick up. Dynamic simulation is virtual crash test dummies that you can just smack around and they'll react similar to how a human would react if he was smacked by a bull. You can give it an animation and then hit it with a ball and it'll react to the ball but try and maintain the existing animation that you have on it. In this case, basically everyone who gets hit by a pole was a dynamic simulation. As the shots get more developed, we add more and more Smiths, and once the animation's final, it can get passed to the cloth department.
We worked very closely with modeling, with rigging, the animators, because we took inputs from all of those, and cloth was essentially sort of a hub.
All the clothing that you see is the way we actually get it to look so real is we get a cloth sample for each one of the characters, whether it's a piece of the suit, a piece of Neo's coat, whatever, and we basically put it through this device that shoots it from many different angles, and it gives us an approximation of how the particular material reacts to light and different camera angles. Then we put that into the computer system and bingo, we get a realistic looking piece of cloth.
The brothers, they wanted to really have a lot of interaction with Neo's cassock, with his personality, or sort of have a connection with that. Once they were done with shooting, they cleaned them up and then they sent it to us so that we would be able to get a look and feel of the weight of it, as well as how it wrinkled and bent, and as well as try to see how well it fit, and little details like, you know, how many snaps were on there, and you know, how far away the buttons are from the collar. So there was a lot of attention paid to this and Agent Smith's outfit.
Both the animation and the cloth get passed to the color and lighting department, and they're the guys that, you know, render it, make it look so real.
We spend a lot of time developing new image-based lighting techniques. We have the ability of extracting every single light in the set so that it looks it's completely mathematically represented in our computer graphics scenes.
One of the big things that makes any computer-generated object look the way it looks is the way in which the light in an environment plays on it.
If we're ever adding a computer-generated component, we have to be able to know exactly how Bill set his lights. So we use the chrome ball that's over there to tell us where everything was and how bright it was.
Because it's a sphere and because it's chromed or mirrored, it actually reflects the entire environment. So by taking a picture of a chrome ball, you've actually taken a picture of effectively the entire environment. And what it's letting us do in one image is measure the color of the environment as seen from any given point. We now have a record, a measurement of the light, of the color and the intensity of the light coming into the point where the chrome ball is.
I would think that the methodology of creating a master content through all those means and then post-photographing it and editing it and all of that stuff, yeah, I think that will become common.
Animation's a difficult thing. We had a great animation team working on the Burly Brawl, and we had a ton of motion capture, but it's still hard to get them nuances in. I think it's going to be quite a while before people can truly see character animations being completely perfect.
We're so accustomed to seeing fights made editorially, where you see a cut to a guy throw a punch, and cut to a reaction, and cut back to a wide shot, and over the shoulder beat. It's all done in the editorial process, and these sequences are not done that way. There are no cuts. The camera is showing you what it wants you to see while it keeps on moving, and it's just a whole new way of seeing something occur.